Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer.
Amen.
Amen.
I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you and with every living creature on earth. Genesis chapter 9. We, as humankind, are part of a single, wondrously complex web of life that's been woven by God. And as we've heard, each year at this time, the Christian family celebrates the wonderful gift of creation. The wonderful gift of creation. Creation, the art of bringing the world into ordered existence. This year, our focus is on what we as humans have done and are doing to this gift. What are we doing to the wonder of this beautifully ordered existence? Psalm 139 last Sunday tells of the wonder of the creation of a human being. Each one of us is precious in God's sight, and each one of us is wonderfully made and has a purpose in life. And yet we're reminded that in that, your works are wonderful, that all of God's handiwork is also precious in His sight. We as humans have tended to concentrate on the love of God for us, forgetting that we are just part of the whole of creation. On the sixth day, God did not only create human beings, He created the whole web of life, living creatures with humans as part of that web. And if we allow this web to unravel, we will destroy ourselves. As humans, we need to take time to lament the loss of each species of God's family of creation, each plant, each animal, each insect, and then to act to try and protect the great biodiversity that still exists before it is perhaps too late. We read about and see images of the Amazon wildfires destroying natural wildlife habitats and vast tracts of forest. But that's in South America. South America is like an awful long way away. We're happy in South Africa. So what about Zimbabwe? Just as an example, which is right on our doorstep. 45% of the land area is covered in forest. However, an estimated 330,000 hectares of the forests are lost annually due to the variety of factors, including clearing of land for agricultural expansion, settlement expansion, infrastructure development, firewood collection, and tobacco curing. Tobacco farmers who need and use firewood for fuel during the curing of their tobacco have caused untold damage to the environment, especially when they cut indigenous trees for fuel wood. It's calculated that the farmers burn in excess of 1 billion cubic meters of wood per year. 1 billion cubic meters. And the problem is threatening to decimate the country's forests, leading to a loss of biodiversity, general land forest degradation, the loss of animal habitats and reduction of water supply. More than 50% of the tobacco produced is exported to China, just illustrating that demands from humankind in one place can cause environmental damage halfway across the world. And this is just one example of the myriad problems across our world, of how our excessive desires are causing instability in the wonderful balance of God's creation. The three parables that make up chapter 15 of the Gospel of Luke all focus on the central theme of the lost getting found and the joy that is shared in finding. Many scholars believe that they were told as a single unit from the beginning of the Christian era, passed along through the oral tradition that Luke used to compile his Gospel account. And today's reading focuses on the first two of these parables. And the key point that strikes one is that in order for the lost to be found, it had to belong to somebody first. The lost sheep was not a wild sheep that the shepherd happened upon and added to his flock. The sheep had belonged to the shepherd from the beginning and had strayed away. The coin that the woman lost had been part of her life savings. It belonged to her. When she found it, she rejoiced with her neighbors that something of her very own had been restored to her. When Jesus told these stories, he was describing things that had once been where they belonged, but had somehow gone missing. And the power of this gospel passage depends on our understanding the value of the lost things. Without the assumption that lost things have value, the parables will lose their impact. So Luke gives us 3 parables on this theme: a lost sheep, a lost coin, and destroying to come, the lost child. And as the parables are told, the ratio of lost to safe changes. It's 1 sheep in 100, 1 coin in 10, then 1 child in 2. Yet the commitment of the shepherd, the woman, and the parent remains total, and the scale of the celebration at the end of each story is lavish. In a very broad context, one can perhaps relate this to humankind's stewardship of the earth. Have we, as humans, perhaps lost the plot, and we really need to find it again? Genesis 1. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." As humans, we were created as part of the web of life, and handed the responsibility of overall stewardship of the web. Stewardship, the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. Why then have we allowed it to become so damaged, so threatened, as in polluted air, plastic debris everywhere, undrinkable rivers, vast landfill sites of rubbish, abandoned mines, just left as eyesores and so on? It's easy to become despondent on looking at the state of the planet. The World Wildlife Fund in their Living Planet report indicate that since 1970 there has been a devastating drop in the population of creatures globally. 38% reduction in land animals, 81% of freshwater creatures, and a 36% drop in ocean populations. So why do we perhaps feel distant, as if we are not part of all this? It's not me doing all this, it's them, not me. As we highlighted in the biblical view, the earth and all that fills it is part of one web of life. And the basic error of modern culture is to separate humanity from the rest of creation. The very term, the environment, suggests that we are a separate entity, while everything else is out there, the environment. The theology of domination has taught us that nature is something separate, to be dominated and controlled. Modern technology may well separate us from being in touch with nature. For many people, it's something perhaps to be viewed on a TV screen, maybe even on a cell phone screen. In Genesis, humans and creations are formed together on the same day, Genesis 1. We don't have our own human day. We are one of God's creatures, but humans have a pivotal role with a special calling for the well-being of creation. When we fail, all creation suffers. So we have 2 challenges: to work with God's redeeming purposes to save creation, and at the same time turn away from the evil ways that may incur God's judgment. The majority of people in the world today seem to have lost touch with the earth from which we were all born. And because we no longer experience ourselves as part of the cosmos, many of us are unwittingly participating in the destruction of God's creation. And to quote Albert Nolan, when we lose touch with creation, we lose touch with God. When we lose touch with creation, we lose touch with God. God never stops loving us or the world, but there are consequences for our actions. The 10 Commandments command us not to covet our neighbor's ox and ass, and yet consumerist adverts almost command us to covet everything that we see. And we've reduced the concept of prosperity and life in all its fullness to a life full of material goods. To a life full of material goods. And we are reaping what we have sown with the impact on creation and the loss of biodiversity. The top environmental problems seem to be selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. The reality is that for many of us, although we worship God, our lifestyles are almost exactly the same as those who don't believe in God. We do not treat creation as something sacred, created by God. Traditionally, we've used the term and the concept of stewardship, looking after all things well. Yet in biblical terms, the word steward is applied either to someone caring for a specific plot of land, vineyard, garden, or field, or more often an amount of money. And to simply apply the term stewardship to the whole world is to overlook the biblical, stronger emphasis on the holiness and the wonder of the world. And God saw that it was good, and it was very good. And God saw that it was good, and it was very good. Is repeated over and over in Genesis. The words good and God derive from the same root in English. So we may say God is good, or twist it round and say the earth is godly. But having listened to all this, what does I, you, we do? What do we do? And amongst a whole raft of possibilities, there are two things we can do, and may well be doing already. To embrace and appreciate the wonder and the joy of nature at every opportunity. Enjoy walks, gardens, leaves, flowers, etc. Everything is wonderfully made, and we tend to just take it for granted. For example, we see a rose and we say, that's a very pretty rose. It's not a very pretty rose, it's wonderfully created. If you pick up the rose and look at it carefully, the way it has been created is stunning. And we should take that interest in nature. We should look at things, look at trees, look at small flowers, look at bugs, and just understand how wonderfully and fantastically they've been made. If we ever need reminding of the wonder of God's creation, just have a look at the Hubble telescope website. We saw some of that on the video earlier. But if you look at that website and see what the galaxies actually look like, stunning, absolutely stunning. And also we can live responsibly. We can recycle and have the health of the environment at the forefront of our minds always. Listen to our consciences. It's quite easy to say, I'll just chuck this in the bin. I won't bother with the recycling. Recycle, whatever we can do, whatever we can do. Listen to our consciences. And if we have lost it, to enjoy the delight of finding and rediscovering the joy of real stewardship and the wonder of creation, and to take away the message of the ancient blessing. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the still air to you. Deep peace of the forgiving heart to you. And deep peace of the Son of Peace.
Amen.